Hello, I'm Luke from Brownlow Utilities and welcome to today's Energy Market Snapshot. So perhaps unsurprisingly, yet another bullish week starts with the opening that we've seen thus far on Tuesday session and indeed on Monday session. So prices as things stand in both the gas and the electric markets for winter 26 trading towards that sort of top end range that we established earlier in the month and indeed earlier in the sort of calendar year, when we saw the missile strikes in Iran at the highest and the intensification of that conflict at its peak. That's where we've seen the highest prices. Now we have fallen outside of what has been termed the Memorandum of Understanding for the period where we saw a relative normality return, or at least a ceasefire in the Strait of Hormuz. That has since passed, but we are seeing a ceasefire kind of hold, albeit with a lot of rhetoric from either side and no real progression in peace talks. We have seen again a lot of flip-flopping from the US administration, particularly on Donald Trump's part, where there's been a real shift in rhetoric. There's been threats to Oman, who are actually a US ally. There have been even pro-North Korean tweets of late, which is really bizarre, but you know, it's sort of symptomatic of his presidency really thus far. And in any case, the added uncertainty of this and the continuation of this conflict occurring has elevated the price, or at least kept it high. Compounding the issue, of course, are the fact that we've got the October deadline coming up. So the vast majority of UK energy renewals, both gas and electric, occur on the 1st of October. So it's, in essence, we have to trade for that period, more like 5 or 6 weeks remaining before we get to the deadline of that. So there's a deadline naturally imposed in the market at the moment, and that's also helping to keep prices elevated, or at least put a bit of resistance to any sort of downside potential that we may or may not have. That means that we've got a very limited period of time to trade for winter, and indeed, as I say, a very limited amount of time to trade for those October renewals. So that's going to keep your prices up, and also means that we've got very limited downside potential in the winter 26 curve as things stand. The less can be said of, that can't really be said of summer 27 or periods thereafter. They have got time to fall away, but summer 27 is embroiled to some extent in that October deadline, given that it is part of the October annual that we're referring to. So, in essence, not a huge amount of downside potential for that winter 26. It's held up by the upcoming deadline, but it's also held up by the fact that we've got very, very poor levels of gas storage available to us in the EU, and I suppose to some degree in the UK as well, albeit we don't really use gas storage to anywhere near the same degree that the likes of Germany do. Other points to make, I suppose, that are also keeping the price elevated for the time being are the fact that we have got another jellyfish occurrence. This occurred last year, but we've seen potentially, and scientists are slightly unclear on this, but we believe it's kind of to do with water temperatures and warmer temperatures encouraging jellyfish inland a little bit. But essentially, we've seen a lot of jellyfish clogging up French nuclear reactors, particularly the Gravelines one. So that has actually seen a reduced output from French nuclear of late, and also, you know, that will naturally have an impact on prices, short-term prices at least, across Europe and indeed in the UK. The heat wave that we saw last week is starting to come to an end. Some of you may be thankful for that, some of you won't be, but in essence that didn't really have a greatly bearish effect on price. It barely affected prices at all. If anything, it had the reverse effect, where low river levels have reduced coolant output for things like nuclear and to some degree coal. Not as important in the UK, but certainly a bit more important in Europe. And as a consequence of that, we've seen day-ahead prices for electricity in particular being quite high at the moment. Bit of good news what we'll throw out there is that we are still expecting an El Nino winter, which means that you are going to have a very, very warm winter. So some of your gas for heating demand over the period October to March should be quite low, quite curtailed. So if you are going to see any downside potential mid-winter or mid-month, that is largely where you're going to see it come from. Elsewhere, the only kind of downside potential I can otherwise see in the market would be if there is a full and final peace deal between the US and Iran, although at the time of reporting that seems unlikely in the near future. So thanks very much for joining. If you want to hear more of these updates or follow us on our various social channels, please do so. These videos are available on LinkedIn and YouTube, and you can also come to our website where you can find out a little bit more about our services, speak to one of our experts, and we can even teach you more about Jellyfish, because there's plenty of that in today's energy market update. Website's www.brownlowutilities.co.uk. And equally, if you are interested, we have got our annual conference coming up 4 weeks away, title of that being Energy Resilience and Net Zero Delivery, so there should be plenty on that spectrum for you to gauge your interest. But again, any questions, please get in touch with us via the website, and see you in a week's time. Thank you.